Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of FPL BlackBox, episode 104. I am joined by Mr. Inspected Goals himself, Mr. Luke Williams. Luke, it was a weird game week. Loads of goals, no points. What did you make of it all?
That summed it up really well, didn't it? Yeah, lots of fun if you weren't playing FPL, definitely. Like, what the hell was that Monday about? It's just ridiculous amounts of goals. But yeah, sadly, pretty much no points across the board. I think I had Salah and Trent, like
Mm,
probably everyone else that scored points, and I don't. Oh yeah, Matoma assist. Aside from that, absolutely nothing. Even a Haaland blank,
I know.
which is ridiculous because I mean, home to Leeds is obviously one of the best games in the calendar. I think it's the top attack versus the worst defense over the season,
Mm.
like literally set up. And I wouldn't even say it was down to like a Big Sam masterclass. He could have scored a hatful. I think the biggest surprise was probably that he got 90 minutes. So,
He had an
you know,
off
if he
day,
went,
didn't he? He really
yeah, in
did.
terms of finishing,
Yeah,
obviously he had lots of chances, and then to top it off, he goes and gives the penalty away when he gets it.
I know.
Not that it would have made any difference because I think he's like 200% EO, isn't he? But it's just nice to at least look at your team and see that it's like vaguely positive. I think we'll go through points in a minute, but everyone's kind of sitting. I would have thought for the vast majority of us within the range of about 30 to 40. Like if you've done okay, like
They'd have been in big trouble, Gundogan and Haaland, wouldn't they, if Leeds had gone on to get something from that game? Because he wasn't happy at the end
absolutely.
of it. That's not going to happen again. I think we're pretty sure now that Haaland is going to be taking future penalties. There's not going to be a random Mahrez or an Edison lining up to take it. It's definitely going to fall back to Haaland.
Yeah, no room for sentiment at the moment. That
No,
was very clear.
no, absolutely not. It is a funny period of the season. We are going to try and do our best to entertain in this stream. Unfortunately, you can see the title, Return of the Mac. You know, March injury, sometimes an injury to a highly owned player can open the door for something exciting, but I think it's just going to mean 99% of people move towards McAllister if you don't have him already, or Matoma, one of those two Brighton mid to double up. And is there any other options? Well, we will discuss as we go, try and uncover some gems. You did uncover a gem last week, and I had him on my bench, so let's try and get a few more of those, and you can gently rib me for that as we go. Before we get into it, a word from our sponsor from this week's episode. We have blessed with some great sponsors over the year from various sponsors, and we're obviously really appreciative of that. This one is NordVPN. Head to nordvpn.com/scouts for a huge discount of their plan and a bonus gift. If you're not familiar with what NordVPN is, or I'm sure you are if you listen to this podcast, it is the top rated and fastest VPN on the market. It gives you access to, well, great security online, particularly on public Wi-Fi. It lets you access other Netflix lets you watch football as well, because you can set your computer to think it's in different countries. You also have threat protection as well, which protects your files, anything that you download. And it's just all round a good thing to have. I mean, I had my car nicked a couple of weeks
Oh
ago.
yes.
Yep, that was
Yeah.
fun. That was fun. So clearly didn't protect that car well enough, but at least I can protect my computer.
Smooth.
How's that for a link?
You got your car back? What's going
No,
on with that?
car's gone. Car is gone. Probably stripped for parts and in a ditch somewhere, waiting for the
Oh,
insurers. I know. Sad times. My
end of
little
an era. Was it
end
was
of
it
an
a
era.
personal fave?
It was a Fiesta that had a lot of problems. So it's
I'm sensing a dodgy backhander from you, Miraz. Have you paid someone off?
yeah. Can we not have this discussion before the insurance pays out?
Okay,
No,
let's leave it there.
it was a good car, but yeah, it's be interesting to see what happens with the with the pattern. It's just a faff of having to sort everything out. It's a bloody nightmare. But anyway, we're not here to talk about my car. Just finally on NordVPN, it's 24/7 support and there's a 30-day money back guarantee as well. Honestly, it's a great thing to use. If you're not using any antivirus at all, do get yourself sorted. Go to nordvpn.com/scout. Oh, let's talk about the game week then. I seem to do this every week. I'm like, oh, let's reflect. I just want 1 week where I'm like, oh yeah, let's talk about this game week. It's going to be
It's
great.
supposed to be an enjoyable experience.
Oh,
I sense the pain every single week.
no, it's just been a painful season, and I'm stuck at around this kind of 160k mark and just not able to push. But the frustrating thing is, you can see my team on the screen. I've had the players to push on, and this week another benching mistake. Pedro Porro, who you very wisely told me to play over Moreno last week, rooted to my bench with 12 points. Would have been the highest scoring player in my team. De Gea, Trent, Dunk, another booking for him and a -1. Moreno, Salah, Rashford, March, Matoma, Haaland captain, Watkins, and my new boy Isak. Yeah, so if I played Perro, that would have been 12. That would have been a green arrow. I had Watkins on the bench and Moreno a few weeks ago. That was like 25 points. I had Isak on the bench when he scored all those points against Spurs. It's like 50 points, Luke. It's like 50 points on my bench. I'd be like 60k if I'd played those players.
Yeah, yeah. I'm sure we've all got similar stories though. Ifs, buts, maybes. Like even this week, as I'm sure we're going to talk about, like benches are just horrific. It's like I'm terrified of the players I might have to put on my bench and what they can do. But yeah, benching Porro, man. Oh, look, I'll be lying if I thought Spurs would get a clean sheet. But
Yeah.
I think we discussed it saying that clean sheets are just pretty much non-existent. So you've got to play your best attacking players. And Porro in a whole home game, I think he ended up pretty much playing right wing. Forget right wing back. He was the most advanced player, which obviously you didn't know before the game. So fair enough.
Yeah, I
But
mean, I still.
he's top of the stats, as
I
he's top
know.
of the stats, and you like your little 6 game windows, and he was right at the top.
I just thought with Wolves having got battered, we targeted their right hand side, and Moreno's obviously playing on the left. His attacking stats were decent, not as good as Porro's, but decent. And I thought there was a higher chance of the clean sheet. And then again, attacking returns is always a bit of a lottery as well. It's defense is just a nightmare to predict who's going to do well and who isn't. But fair play, you said to me you definitely play Porro, and I got that completely wrong. And it's not just a little punish. If it's like 4 or 5 points, you're like, oh, okay, I've been punished, but I can take it. When it's 10 points, it's like, oh, come on.
Yeah, that's brutal. That's
Yeah.
brutal. But that's what FPL does for you. Whenever you make a mistake, it makes sure that it
Absolutely.
favours the point, right? Absolutely stamps on your head when you're on the floor just to make sure.
Absolutely.
It's
I know.
ridiculous.
And then I had to endure Brighton's performance. I mean, going into Everton at home with Dunk, March, and Matoma, and I get 5 points between the three of them. Some people got less. Mark had double defense, for example.
Did he have Duncan Steele?
Had Estepinian and Steele, so
Right.
-2 from those two at home to Everton. It was a ridiculous game, and we're gonna do a bit of an inquest into Brighton, I think, because obviously lots of investment in them going into the double, and Newcastle as well. I mean, Newcastle's performance I thought was really, really poor against Arsenal, and
I think we both had him down to win, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. Yep.
Yeah, I think Arsenal just did a proper professional job on them, to be honest. I think apart from the first sort of 10, 15 minutes in the first half, and arguably the first 10 minutes of the second half, where
Yeah.
Newcastle looked like they were on top, Arsenal just controlled the game. They're very professional.
No, I mean Isak had a couple of chances, didn't he? It was the experiment that we've been waiting to see with Isak and Wilson starting together. It was a colossal, failure. I think they couldn't seem to link up very well, and like you say, Arsenal just looked quite comfortable and saw it out. And I wonder if Howe is going to try that experiment again, or whether he's going to revert back to what's been going, which might mean just one start each for Wilson. And
Was definitely a risky game to try it in, I would say. But
I was
it's
really
all linked
surprised.
to,
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, I suppose it's the Longstaff thing, isn't it? As the Newcastle fans were saying, they might play them both together, but it feels like a really tough game to try it in. To be honest, I wouldn't put it just down to that. I think Wilson was pretty much non-existent, but there's no saying that Isak wouldn't have also been non-existent down the middle with another winger. So
yep.
obviously very different games they've got coming up. I think a lot still depends on Longstaff, unless I mean, I was speaking to a couple of Newcastle fans. They were saying they think that's the experiment done, and to be honest, you'll just put another winger in and go with one up top. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
It's at least an option for him to play too, it seems.
I was expecting Isak up front, and then in that game, and then the duo maybe against Leeds, because obviously they're a lot more frail than Arsenal. But maybe that was the tactic, was just to try and outscore Arsenal and do it. Anyway, I think Howe probably got it wrong, but yeah, we'll see what happens, and hopefully we'll get some team news ahead of the next game. Your game week, 1 point more than me. Check you out. And that's Estepinian over Dunk, pretty much. I mean, we've got almost identical teams. Your big differentials against me. The Chelsea defensive double up. Kepa and Chilwell. What a disaster.
Yeah, to be fair, I mean, Bournemouth's goal was pretty much a worldie. So I don't think there was much I could do about that. And, we wouldn't have predicted Chelsea to just win 3-1, but I think I was a little bit unlucky there as a result of that. I think the main issue for me this week was just the fact that I've got Chilwell and March are probably like my only slight differentials, if you could even call them that, in
Yeah.
my team. And for both of them to go off injured with hamstrings
I
is just
know.
depressing. Yeah,
Yeah.
because I think Chelsea was struggling to score, and then Chilwell went off, and then they suddenly scored 3 goals. I think if he's on the pitch, maybe he's involved in one of them, right? And I get some points. And even if he's not, it's really this week the home to Forest game that I kind of kept him for, and now he's probably out of that. So that's depressing. Yeah, I already went through it. Like literally, no one scored points this week that I own, or I can't think. I think Mahrez got 10, didn't he? I think he's about 10 points he got. I can't think of too many other highly owned players outside of McAllister that we both don't own.
No.
That have done well. That would have been an obvious picks at least.
Kane scoring again.
Of course, Kane. Yeah, forgot about Kane.
Yeah. I
But
mean,
what I'm quite annoyed about is I liked Willian this week, believe it or not. I thought he was a good option because Fulham have got great games from now to the end of the season, starting with this game. And the fact that Mitrovic and Pereira are out, I thought, well, okay, there's a good chance that Willian might actually be on penalties because he's taken them before. So that's why I kind of thought, oh, he could be a good option because he'd be on penalties. Turns out he didn't score a penalty. He scored 2 great goals from open play.
yeah.
But it was the fact that he's a midfielder, so I don't know how the hell I'd have got him in my team. And second of all, he was a doubt to even play the game. So it just felt like it's just too much of a risk to take. And now Mitrovic is back. So I assume, I mean, I don't know if it's a given, but Mitrovic might now take back over penalties. I suppose that's up for debate given how he's performed in that area over the season. But yeah, looking for those little players, I suppose it's like you kind of like a little bit annoyed at yourself that you didn't get him and you thought they'd do well. But when like he's owned by like 5 people in the game, you just have to kind of let it go. It just has no impact pretty much.
Well, yeah, exactly. It's similar to me and Porro. I'm not. I don't want to spend the whole stream bitching about that, but it is frustrating because you're like you say you're looking for these pockets of differentials, and like you've got Chilwell and March as those lesser ones. Now they're both injured. Now March to McAllister is. I assume that's what you're going to do.
I've already done
it
that.
exactly. So I feel like we've free hitting. I would have had Isak as a differential there, and now I benched him. Porro, he would have been really good for me. Moreno a few weeks ago. It's like I've been so close to hitting them and just not been able to do it. And like you say, you spot a player in midfield that you want, like a Willian, or I talked about Joe Linton last week or someone. But you look at your midfield. I mean, who are you going to sacrifice? Rashford and Grealish both got the double next week. Matoma and March both got 2 doubles in a row. Salah's playing the way he is. Like you can't realistically take any of those out, especially for someone like Willian, who'd be a fun punt, but it's just not sensible, is it?
No, that's it. And we're all trying to play sensible, most of us. I do think, and that's what we're trying to do in this podcast, I guess, for these 3 games remaining. Again, it's hard to make the case to pick anyone outside of the teams that have got a high volume of fixtures. So Brighton, United, City, Newcastle, I think have all got the most games there, and Chelsea. But after that, you start looking at teams with just the single games. It's like Palace are right near the top of the fixture list. And it's like, yeah, you could go for their options. But most of the teams like that have got their options in midfield. Like I've already discussed, you ain't going to buy a Palace forward unless you're Mark Ovens. So
No. Come on to it. Well, there's a lovely quote in chat from Greg Frost. The doubles are crippling creativity.
yeah,
Perfect.
that's bang on. That's bang on. And I know we're moaning, but it's because we want the game to be competitive, I think. And that, people say, well, stop moaning, just do what you want. Fair enough, you can do. But the bottom line is you want to play the best you can possibly play. And if the fixtures are laid out that way, then having more games is generally a good thing. And people are just going to do it. Like there's no real reason not to do it. I think the only thing I'd say now is we are at the point, especially towards the end of the season, and there's only this many games left where, and I don't want to pick a figure on the rank because it's independent to each individual. If you're not happy with your rank, you can just do pretty much, I think, whatever you want from this point on. And, if you're not bothered if you finish an extra 50k or 100k less by doing so, then just get on with it, I think, and just do whatever you want. I think it's just go with it. Like there's no reason to sort of, I mean, obviously don't go crazy and pick someone like Kante, but if you would think Eze is a good option for Palace, Bournemouth, Fulham, Forest, why not? I just think if you can do it, then go for it. There's no one saying don't, I don't think.
That's next week's title sorted. Just get on with it.
Just get on with it. Yeah. Or do what I do, bitch and moan, and then just buy McAllister.
Yeah. Let us know in the comments if you've got any differentials in your team. I mean, Khalid O's in the chat. He says he bought Carlos Vinicius, probably when Mitrovic got.
He's looked really good recently.
Yeah.
Like I didn't know that he had that in him. Every time I've seen him, he just looks like he's a decent player now. Which I'm not sure he actually is, but he's performing well.
I mean, he hasn't exactly done great, but over the last 3 weeks, he got the goal against City, blanked against Liverpool, 9 points against Leicester. that's a good move. I mean, I don't know, fair play if you've got Carlos Vinicius for City and Liverpool, but assuming maybe you bought him for Leicester, that's a decent week. I mean, any Dwight McNeil owners? Come on,
Christ.
it's got to be one. Got to be one out there. A few people saying they've still got Kane. Yeah, Kane is a differential now, isn't he? In kind of the EO circles.
Absolutely. I'd be happy if you had him. I think Spurs are. I mean, their fixtures are pretty good, I'd say.
Yep.
I mean, who have they got? Yeah, Villa, Brentford, and Leeds. They've got. I think that's fine.
The Leeds game is nice, isn't it? In 30, I think it's going to be a lot of us, potentially even thinking about taking hits. Differential captain potentially in that week. Quite a few differential City players. Alvarez being mentioned, Foden being mentioned, Mahrez as well. We're going to talk about those in a bit because Foden and Mahrez are interesting, aren't they? Because they're getting saved in the Champions League and seem to be starting in the Premier League. So I think their place against Everton is maybe a bit more secure. Alvarez, I still don't know. I still don't know about that. De Bruyne got another knock, didn't he, last night?
I don't know if it was a knock. Yeah, I put a tweet out about it. Literally in like the last attack where they burst forward, he kind of pulled up, but it was like the camera had kind of moved a little bit, so you couldn't really see for sure, and he kind of stopped for a little bit. And then he kind of hobbled back a bit. And then even when he come back to the penalty area, he was kind of stepping a little bit gingerly. But then at the same time, he was clearly absolutely knackered. And De Bruyne does do this. And I don't know if anyone's seen the Player of the Match award that he won afterwards. Go and look at that photo if you find it. And he's standing there holding the trophy and just look at his face. He looks like he's had the worst day ever. He's been dragged through a book. Like, he is done, like completely done. So I don't know whether it was just sheer tiredness.
They all look, I mean, we talk about Pep not making subs. They all looked absolutely shattered at the end of that. I mean, Grealish has
put into it.
Yeah, Grealish has said, hasn't he? It's the most he's ever run in a game.
Yeah, cramp in both calves. Yeah. And I think De Bruyne, what was I going to say? I've totally forgotten what I was going to say now. He
looked knackered, dragged through a hedge.
Yeah, no, I've already said that. When he scored the goal. That's it. When he scored the goal. And I know it might just be partly the fact that it is a very emotional time. They want to win the Champions League. It's the semi-final, but it's rare to see that from him. I think that was partly because he just had no energy left. He was like, thank
God. He'd also not had the best game before that goal.
No, not particularly.
So, big moment for them. But yeah, really interesting. That second leg's going to be really exciting next week, and I think it will have an impact on this week on the team section. Some great comments. I mean, Willock is being mentioned quite a lot in the chat as well. Even Pete FPL team thinking about captaining Willock this week. Why not?
Get on with it.
Get on with it. Perfect. This was Mark's team. He was top of the pile this week, thanks to Brennan with his 8 points. That's
a
points.
Monster score this week.
No, 42. He had McAllister and Johnson. And then everyone else did poorly. Fernandez again with a blank. I just don't expect him to get returns any week, and then he just blanks. I'm like, oh yeah, he's blanked again. Good. Got no.
That's the one piece of solace I'm taking at the moment because my team's so template. I don't have Bruno, so even though my team's done terribly, it's like the fact that Bruno blanks like makes my week. I'm like, oh god, let me just take that one crumb of hope that I've got out this week. Thank God for that, because if he does anything, it's like, he's not even that highly owned, I think, overall, but obviously amongst the top managers, he is quite well owned, so could be devastating.
I've got to say, Mark's team is nice. I mean, he's managed to find a way to bring in Salah, Fernandez and Haaland, and he hasn't really compromised anywhere, really, because he's got Trippier that can come in, he's got the doubles in place. He's all set for a strong end to the season, but I think the top million, as we'll see from the great and good, the top 100,000 is going to evade him. He's 410,000 with 3 weeks to go. He's going to need a bit of a miracle, I think, to do that. About 60 points or something, 60, 70 points. I don't think that's going to happen. I'm slipping as well, 163k. You're flying. Don't know why I've added you to this. Just good for your ego. You're in and sixth on this, just behind FPL General, 33k. Lovely for you. Ahead of Fabio. That's got to be your target, isn't it? Just stay ahead of Fabio, and you should have a good end to the season.
I'd love that. But he's not had a great season overall, well, especially for him. But look at that, he's the only person that captained Salah. And that's probably, I mean, how many did Salah score this week? Was it 8 points, or have I made that up?
He got 10, didn't he?
He got 10, did he? Yeah. I mean, that compared to Haaland is a big differential, isn't it? And I think his team's quite similar to ours outside that. So how ballsy is that, though? Given the fact that he will have known that Haaland is starting.
Yeah, well, that's it. I mean, if we'd had no team news, I would have captained Salah. because I would have thought there's a risk of Haaland starting and he's probably going to get 60, 70 minutes. As soon as I saw Haaland in the lineup, there was no way I wasn't going to captain him. Like, it was, he's against Leeds. That could be 4 goals in that. So, people say about team news giving advantages, but I think that probably pushed a few people to Haaland. But like you say, I mean, it was just one of those days for him. It wasn't like he had a bad game. He could have had 2 or 3 in that match. So yeah, don't look at it too bad with hindsight. Shout out to Tom Freeman, who was the only manager who wasn't right down the bottom of this list, who managed a green arrow with 41. But yeah, Mark was the top scorer, 42. That is just sums up how bad a week it was this week. Let's look at Ben Krellin's graphic. 3 weeks to go. I can't quite believe it. But we're into 36. Just the 2 doubles. 1 for Brighton, 1 for Newcastle. And they'll be the focus of the rest of this stream. But do bear game week 37 in mind with Brighton, Chelsea, City, and United with a good double, actually, with Bournemouth and Chelsea on the horizon for them. So I think this week, it's going to be Isak, Matoma, McAllister. We'll talk about those captaincy options. But in 37, there's going to be quite a few, right? Brighton have got 2 home games. There's Haaland. There's, Rashford.
Absolutely. I think Rashford and Bruno are appealing. I mean, people are probably still just going to go Haaland, aren't they? We're probably wasting our breath. But the fixtures, I would say, are better bet for Man United. I mean, they both play Chelsea, and they both play them at home. Is that right? Yeah.
Yep.
So you can almost disregard that. So what's a worse fixture? Away to Brighton or away to Bournemouth? So yeah, I think there's an argument. Plus, I mean, you throw in the fact that he's a midfielder. I guess the fact he hasn't scored for about 2 months, Rashford, now probably put people off. But he's the kind of player who can turn it around. I mean, he was the triple captain in whatever game week it was that probably did the most damage this season if he didn't go there. I think he got 20 pointed, didn't he? And so I suppose there'll be some people out there will look to make that Hail Mary in 37. And if they think that Haaland will get reduced minutes, I don't think it's a bad pick necessarily.
Yeah, I mean, I don't own Bruno, but looking at these next 3 game weeks, I mean, Wolves at home and then the double, and then Fulham at home in 38, it is a nice. I'm not going to get him, I don't think, unless I take a couple of hits. But that does worry me a little bit. Hopefully he can keep blanking the way he does, but he's a good investment.
What
I think.
about Salah to Bruno in 37? Because that's probably what I'll do. It doesn't feel great to lose Salah home to Villa and then he's away to Southampton. But I think that move, obviously, everyone will be able to afford it because he costs less. So you're basically gaining yourself a fixture, and I think that's fine. I think that's what a lot of people will look at, actually.
Yeah, maybe. I like that Southampton game, but then the away form. It'll be interesting to see how Liverpool do in this away match against Leeds, because we're all against Leicester, because we're all expecting them to win it comfortably, but they have had issues away from home this season. So if they struggle in that game to break down even Leicester, that might make us a bit more reluctant to keep him when we could move for Bruno. But yeah, interesting. I think 37 this week is relatively dull, but in 37, 38, as you like to say, the Hail Marys could come into play. Yeah, potentially. Hopefully. One question I'm getting a fair bit is on Brighton and how we're likely going to line up without March. So, I mean, I'm not the best person to ask on this. The best person to ask on this is definitely Neil over at Fantasy Football Scout. He's the lineup king. He spends hours going through the forums and, trying to pick out the team he thinks is going to start. This is pretty much on the screen how I think we will line up. I think the Steele Sanchez one is interesting. I wouldn't be surprised to see Sanchez come in this game. Yeah.
Well, just because of that mistake, or?
I just think he could make, he's going to make quite a few changes in this game. I mean, for example, here, Neil's gone with Gross at right back, Billy Gilmore coming back into the side, Colwill coming in, and Ciso coming back in, Ferguson coming in. That's like 4 or 5 changes. It was so disastrous that, I think it was the one concern I had with Steele. It was like, if there is an absolute disaster class and Sanchez has now sort of done all right in that semi-final game when called upon, there is always the chance that he could potentially come back in if there was something like this. I just wasn't expecting it to be against Everton.
I didn't know that. I didn't realise that he was, apart from obviously the own goal, I can't say that I noticed that he was a disaster class. Maybe I just wasn't paying attention. Was he at fault for any of the other goals then? 'Cause I didn't really see that.
Not so much a disaster class from him, but a performance.
Oh, okay,
disaster
overall.
class
I
in
think
general.
Colwell's almost a certain. I think
Mm.
Webster was pretty poor in that game, and Colwell was, in my opinion, earning that position. And I was quite surprised that he hasn't really got back in. I don't know what was going on there.
It was an unbelievably bad performance from the two centre backs. Dunk had the
Mm.
worst game I've seen him have in years. Webster just didn't. It made too many mistakes. I mean, the inquest is essentially Everton played really, really well, and we were talking last week about them potentially getting thrashed. I think you had them like a 5-0
I had
loss,
6-0 to
6-0.
Brighton,
Yeah.
with the caveat, I will add, if they pressed them like
Mm.
they would want them to do. And I mean, I wasn't. I must admit, I've mostly seen highlights from this game, so I could be talking out of my arse, but it didn't look like to me that they did that. It felt like they played the smart approach and kind of sat off a little bit.
Mm.
And then obviously broke and countered, and it was almost like 2v2. It's almost like a Man City game, isn't it? Where sometimes they would, when they were getting broke on sort of 2v2, 2v3 quite a lot.
No, I mean, they were more than happy to have 9 players in the penalty area when
Yeah.
Brighton were on the attack, and that's we've really struggled against teams that've done that. We've struggled against Forest when they've done that, and it's why we've struggled in quite a few games against teams that we've been expected to beat. We couldn't deal with Calvert-Lewin. He was just absolutely brilliant. He was like everything that Bamford wants to be for Leeds, but just does everything so much more effectively, holding the ball up, bringing players into play, strong, quick. McNeil had a 1 in a million game where just everything he did came off, and
He has like one of those a
I
season
know, well,
sometimes.
exactly, yeah. And then individual mistakes from the whole team. The midfield got bypassed. Players like Matoma were giving the ball away. It was just a
It seems like
complete
people have
disaster.
worked Mitoma out a little bit more now.
Mm,
He's so right-footed, and it's kind of affected them recently a little
yeah.
bit. I still think he's a little bit unlucky, and I still think he's great player, so he can make it work. But people are definitely taking advantage of the fact that he's so one-footed. Evan Ferguson looked great when he came on. I
Mm,
think that um, if I mean, I just don't know whether he's nailed, because even when he was fit, to me they seem to play other people there. But if he is nailed and now is going to play every single game, then I really do like the look of him personally.
yeah.
Um, I suppose how do you say it? Cisco, is he more likely to see minutes because obviously March being out, you can pretty much guarantee he'll play that spot, or is it not? As I suppose people are probably looking at one of those two. And Ferguson, I actually like better on paper if he was actually
Mm.
to play, because he's right up front, obviously. But I think in terms of minutes, it's probably a little bit safer to go than Cisco. Have I got that wrong?
It's Enciso because
Enciso,
there's no
sorry.
second C.
I'm just
I've
adding some
Yeah, I've been doing
flair.
that. As you probably got from I've been doing that every week. Yeah, I mean the basically the March replacement is going to come down to either Enciso, Buonanotte, or Gross playing on the right. The thing is, we need Gross at right back because Veltman is injured, so unless we play Casado there again, which he did do quite effectively against Wolves, I think we might see Gross go back, but they're both going to play, so it doesn't really matter because either Gross will play midfield or Casado will. So that leaves in Scissor or Buonanotte. Buonanotte just doesn't look ready, really, for sort of consecutive minutes. He's young and raw, and he's looked good in spells, but Enciso is above him, I think, in the pecking order. So he comes straight back in, I think. It's going to be a bit makeshift, though, because he's not really a right winger. He's more of a kind of a 10 striker type role.
His ability to kind of turn on the ball and just
Mm,
break past a few players is pretty good, isn't it?
mm.
Yeah, he seemed to have some moments. I think Brighton were a little bit unlucky. I mean, look at the XG, and Brighton, I think, actually beat them as usual.
I see.
Yeah, but a lot of that was obviously just the Everton have gone quite high up, and then they've had to try and fight back and score as best they can. So they've had all the ball and been attacking. But yeah, it's interesting to see, because Brighton have been obviously fantastic since the new managers come in. They've shown us in loads of different games that they can play at like the highest level. They're starting to top like all the stat matrix across, but then the results recently just not been what
Mm.
you'd like. And then they've picked up a few injuries. That March one was heavily frustrating for us owners. The fact he got benched in the first place was a bit of a surprise to me, but then it came out that he's not in his best moment or whatever. So I think it kind of explained it. And then he came on and looked the part. He looked really good, like he could make something happen. And then he goes and pulls his hamstring. It's like, for God's sake.
Well,
So
I
now,
didn't understand that comment about him not being in his best moment because he played the game straight after the loss at United and played well against Forest. He was one of our best players in that, making stuff happen. Benched against Wolves, and then I just wasn't expecting to be benched, especially because we just don't really have that option at right wing. And Buonanotte just didn't really work. So I don't know what's gone on there, but
I think I don't think there's any world in which March is not better than Buonanotte. I think when they say that, sometimes we read too much in it. It could be literally that the medical team have said like he's in the red zone because he picked up a knock in that cup game, didn't he?
Yeah.
I know he played straight away afterwards, but he kind of patched him up, I guess. I don't know. And maybe that means physically he's not in his best moment, or it could even be, just stuff we don't get information to. It could be attitude, could be what he's seeing on the training pitch. Because in terms of performances on the field, I don't think you could point that at March because he's done well.
It's not performance. I'd be very surprised if it was attitude. I met Chris Hughton a little while ago, a few days ago.
Oh yeah,
yeah,
nice. He didn't nick your car.
No, he didn't. He's lovely. He is. When you meet,
he's like one of the nicest guys. He comes across that way.
Yeah, when you kind of like meet your hero. I met him and he was. I was at like a work thing. And he was in the lobby. He's manager of Ghana. No.
Oh my god!
And he was doing some research. He was watching Ghanaian football. Is it Ghanaian football? I think he was watching some Ghana players.
Well, you tell me. What was he watching?
He was watching a Ghana match, I think,
right.
on his laptop. And I got chatting to him, and I just couldn't get away. He was really happy to chat about everything.
I love that.
And just one thing he said was how surprised and happy he was that March has gone on to kind of have the career that he had, because he was quite quiet, he said, and had the ability, but wasn't really sure if his kind of personality would see him to the top level, but it has, and he's had a great season. It's a massive shame to see him going off with that's probably his season done, right? I'd imagine. Only a couple of weeks left.
Would have thought so, yeah.
Yeah. Cool, right. If anyone watches Ghanaian football, apologies. I don't know. Does Ghana have a league? I don't know.
Well, of course it will. Let's have a look. Ghanaian league. I shall Google it while you do things.
I'll move on to the next. Team data, attack. This is quite interesting, actually, because we're looking at this over the last 6 matches. We're focusing on Brighton and Newcastle. Who are top over the last 6 matches? I'll tell you, Luke. It's Brighton and Newcastle. Brighton at the top. XG non-penalty per 90 of 2.47. Newcastle in second with 2.3. Their opponents, obviously each other, but then you've got Brighton playing Arsenal away. They're in 8th, 1.58. And Newcastle playing Leeds, crucially, because we're going off the double defence and Trippier captain, but Leeds, although they seem to keep finding a way to score a goal, they are 16th for XG non-penalty per 90 over the last 6. So yeah, Brighton and Newcastle top. Are you expecting goals from them both this week?
Before we move on to that, I'm going to give you one chance to guess the name of the Ghanaian Premier League.
I can't.
There's a clue in what I've just said.
The Ghanaian Football League.
You're so close.
The Ghana Football.
I'm going to reveal it. It is the Ghana Premier League.
The Ghana Premier League. Lovely. There you go.
There you go.
Premier League. Yeah. I don't think Chris Hughton was watching that. I think he was watching Ghana play.
Someone in the chat here called Big Head saying, yes, we do have a league and it's not very good.
No.
Oh, okay.
I didn't think it would be the highest quality, but yeah, it's good to know. It's good to know he's on. I'm sure Chris Hughton does watch the Ghanaian.
Why is this?
The Ghanaian Premier League, is that what it's called?
The Ghana Premier League is when I put it in. Yeah. Big Head, remind me, who's the guy who played for Parma who was a defensive midfielder in like 2001, 2002? He was a good player at one point. Put it in the chat. I've forgotten. Good. Anyway, what did you ask me about Leeds?
We're getting very distracted with Ghana and me praising March, who isn't even going to play for us. Brighton Newcastle, top of the team data attack. Are you expecting lots of goals for both of these two teams?
Yes.
Good.
Because the stats say that they should be the top attack, and it's not just the last 6, it's also across the season they're right up. So I have no reason to doubt that they will score some decent amount of goals. The fixtures aren't the best for Brighton and Newcastle and everyone, but I think they'll probably score some goals. What about you?
Yeah.
Stephen Apaya, thank you.
Stephen Apaya.
That's one.
There you go. Yeah, I mean, Newcastle, we'll come on to the defence now, because this is also key. I mean, Brighton and Newcastle still 5th and 6th on this list over the last 6. Very close to each other, right at the top of the table for attack, and then, in the top 6, both of them for defence. But look at their opponents. Arsenal in 14th. Bottom 10, 1.69 expected goals conceded, non-penalty per 90, 1.69, and Leeds in 18th, so 2.25. So both these teams are top of the attack, and they're playing teams both in the bottom 10. There's going to be goals, surely.
Yeah, that's what should happen. The way football's been going recently, I don't think we can predict it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't argue with that. I think I mean, again, when it's last six, sometimes the opponent knew they played factors heavily. I think Arsenal have played Man City in that time, and Leeds have as well. So that's going to have an effect. But yeah, nothing to add there.
It's an
It looks like
interesting,
a good game on paper.
it's an interesting list this because I mean it's you're looking at it and you're like, what? It's like City at the top, well, obviously, and then it's Palace, okay, then it's Villa, okay, they haven't been great lately, but fine, and then it's Liverpool, and then it's Brighton and Newcastle, and then it's Fulham in seventh, and you think we talk about being on the beach, don't we? Well, they definitely weren't on the beach when they put 5 goals past Leicester, who were desperate to score goals.
Yeah.
You had a bit of a row with Mark, didn't you, recently
One,
about being on the beach?
once upon a time, yeah, I passionately defend that. I think it's just used a lot when it suits and not when it goes the other way. Everything's based on an individual game, I suppose, and even from game to game, you could say, well, suddenly do they get a kick up and Arsenal change? But the one thing I'm happy to concede is the fact that usually when teams are both on the beach, apparently there's usually more goals involved in the game. But I don't think you can necessarily level that. And many of the games from this weekend had lots of goals in. I think that one of the team usually had something to play for.
Yeah.
Just a bit of an anomaly overall. Maybe I've
I
got one of those
mean,
wrong.
we're probably going to see the majority of things going right to the wire, right? Because the top six battle was exciting, even the top four potentially if United slip up again and Liverpool are looking to pounce. The title race should go to the wire, I think. And then the bottom, I mean, Southampton are gone, but, Leeds, Forest, Everton, Leicester, these teams all battling it out. So I think we're going to go into 38 with teams with something to play for. If that
It's exciting down there.
It is exciting. Yeah.
I mean, I think even technically Southampton can get out of it still if they win every game and no one else gets a point. I think I'm right in saying that. It's probably not going to happen.
I
But
think that's going to happen. Do you see Mark's post about his heart rate during that Forest game?
no, I didn't. I can only imagine.
Yeah.
On that note, Gibbs White has really stepped up, hasn't he? He's almost taken over as the talisman from Brennan Johnson, even taken penalties from him and everything.
Yep.
If they do manage to stay up next season and he's got a kind price, he will be one what people look at, I think, because it's all set pieces and penalties. If they do price him kindly, is an option. If he's around sort of the 5.5 mark, I think it'll be fairly interesting.
Well, he's got 2 double-digit hauls in his last 4 games, and he's returned in all 4 of those matches. Liverpool, Brighton, Brentford, tough games, and then the big game, obviously, against Southampton. Do you know how many goal involvements he's had this season, Gibbs White?
Gibbs White? They haven't scored that many goals, have they? I don't know, go 7, 8.
15.
Christ. Yeah, it's a lot more than I expected.
Isn't it? I mean, that's a good season. That's the same as, or almost the same as Grealish, I think, for example. And you've got to think, like you say, you've got to think Forest are going to get better next year. I think he could be a real option, particularly if he keeps pens next year. So, yeah, one to watch. I think he's a very classy player.
Yeah, let's just hope they price everyone well, because obviously if you start looking at players that you can get for like 6 and 6.57 that are top tier players, then it turns us away from all these guys, doesn't it? So we have to hope that there's a big enough gap.
Yeah. I wonder if Mark's happy with how Johnson's done this year, because he's had a good season, I'd say, but maybe not elite. Lots to ask.
Yeah. He's shown it in periods where he looks like he's a good player. I just think he drifts out of matches a little bit too much. But it's hard to level it when they play for a team like Forest, because you're not expected to have the ball a lot.
No,
you don't have the ball a lot, and you just don't know what they can do in other teams necessarily. I think they'll be fine. Well, assuming they stay up, I think they'll keep him, and maybe they can. Awanoe looks like a hell of a player as well. I mean, he had great stats before he came to the league, and I think it took him a while to adjust. But having him on the pitch, I think, makes a difference.
God, he's such a presence, isn't he? He just bullies the way he bullies defenders. Absolute unit. He's very good. Yeah, I mean, if Forest go down, I think Gibbs White and Johnson will be heavily courted by players. It'll be interesting to see where they go if they do go down. But hopefully, Mark, they won't, and you'll be fine. Goalkeepers over the last 6 game weeks, I've just put in Steele and Pope, because I think if you're going to be buying one, it's probably going to be one of those two. I wouldn't be buying Steele. I mean, you're pretty confident he starts, but you wouldn't buy.
Well, I don't know. I just think he still suits the way they want to play all the time, and more than Sanchez, and that's the main reason he's been picked. I don't doubt that Sanchez could get like especially if they're looking to sell him or whatnot. I think maybe he could get like one game before the season ends, but I still wouldn't think that he would just pick him on performance alone. But what do I know? At the end of the day,
he's not a great goalkeeper still. Like, there's a
You may
reason
go
why
and
he's
just
been
buy
like,
one, to be honest.
yeah, well, there's a reason why he's been third choice for like 3 or 4 years that he's been at Brighton. I know, like, we've had that with Martinez in the past. I don't think he's going to be a Martinez that, suddenly becomes our first choice and starts representing England. He must be English at the World Cup. So, yeah, I don't know. I think the goalkeeper is going to be a key position for De Zerbi in the summer. And I think he could potentially just use these games to kind of give them both a chance to try and stake a claim. And yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens with Steele. Anyway, Pope's down there in ninth. Do you like Pope this week?
I say like's probably a bit strong, but he's one of the moves I may end up doing. Because I need to get a third new. Well, I don't need to, but I want to get a third Newcastle, and I've pretty much got Pope, Shah, or Wilson as my three options, and none of them really particularly inspire much confidence for me to get. Um, so yeah, he's in the frame. I talked about it last week that a lot of my transfers might involve goalkeepers towards the end of the season, so I'm trying to do everything I can in my power to avoid it. In fact, I know why I can't get Pope now because March has got injured and I have to now go to McAllister, whose costs like 0.4 or 5 more. I now can't afford Pope, so I've been saved from that. But to be honest, I think Pope would have been not too bad of an option because the games aren't great defensively. Others, it feels like games he could end up getting a few saves in, and we do see it in double game weeks quite a lot where he is a good goalkeeper who can make saves and. He can end up maybe getting a clean sheet and then 4 or 5 saves across the 2 games or even in one game and end up with a fairly decent score.
I like him this week.
Yeah.
I think he makes saves. I think he's got a good chance of a clean sheet against Leeds. If I was picking one this week, I'd be going for him. Certainly.
Yeah, I suppose most people have got Trippier, and then I suppose most people would probably want Isak, and then the third one is very much up for debate. But if you're going, for all out, then it's probably Wilson that most people go for. But yeah, like I say, you've got Pope 180 minutes. Guaranteed, potentially can do quite well this week. And then you got Wilson, who, yes, he could start one of them, could start both of them, he could just start none of them because of the gap between the game and just come on for like 2 cameos. And suddenly it's a bit of an issue. Like I'm in an area, I'm seeing a lot of people saying they're going to go for that. And maybe we get a team league, which ends up deciding this for us. But for me, I'd have to sell Watkins to do it. And people probably say, Watkins not been doing great recently. But I think selling a 90-minute, guaranteed 90-minute player who's on penalties, home game versus Spurs, yes, they kept a clean sheet last week, but they've been defensively all over the place. Like that has the potential to go quite wrong, I think. Watkins could easily do well in that game, and then I could sell for Wilson, who just comes on for 2 10-minute games.
I completely agree. I think
tough.
It goes against a lot of what we kind of aim to do in FPL, going for a player who we're pretty sure is going to only start one of the matches is a massive, doubt. I'm seeing people captaining Wilson, for example, and we're going to look at his stats. His stats are very, very impressive. Don't get me wrong, but I think you're going to get 90 minutes. I think out of him. I don't think he's not going to start both games over the double. I'd be very surprised if he did.
Yeah, I wouldn't have thought so, but yeah, it's just I thought it was just me that's thinking.
No, I've got Watkins. I'm not selling him home to Spurs. Yeah.
I suppose it's that whole desire to, what's the worst that can happen? He's got the potential to go big if he plays, part in both of those games, and
it's the lack of options.
Try and do something. Yeah,
it's
exactly.
the lack of other options. I think Willock is a good option, as people are mentioning. But if you've got a solid 5 in midfield, it's hard to justify it. The defence looks ropey for both teams at the moment. Brighton with the tough fixtures. Newcastle was struggling to keep clean sheets. So making a move for a Share or a Botman or something, it just isn't as sexy either, is it? Whereas if you pair up those Newcastle attackers, they could hit a big score, and they could well do. It just doesn't. For Watkins, I can see it if you're selling someone, who's not maybe doing that well for you, like a Jota potentially. And if I still had Jota, I'd be considering it because is he definitely going to start against Leicester? There's rotation with him. Go for Wilson. It's a bit more interesting, but Watkins, like you say, with a guaranteed 90 in the pens, he's a hold for me. Anyway, this isn't goalkeepers.
No.
We're ruining our content for later. Let's go on to defenders. I've highlighted the double game week defenders here. I've also highlighted Porro because his stats are very impressive. He's in the top 10 for chances created. Shots per 90, he's second, I think, only to Vina of Bournemouth, who He's scored the wonder goal, right? Was that him, Vina?
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah.
Yeah, great goal. XGI non-penalty 90 of 0.27. But to bearing in mind, he's got these incredible kind of attacking stats. 0.27 isn't exactly setting the world alight. Trippier, much higher, 0.39. I know he hasn't been getting the points. His points per 90, 1.73 over the last 6. That is really, really low, considering what he's been doing week on week. But look at Trent. Trent is now way up to the top, 0.47. That's nearly doubled since before his shift to midfield. Chance created per 90, 2.29, top 10. Shots per 90 is high as well, 1.43. And 6 points per 90. He is,
he's dominating at the moment.
Dominating,
absolutely.
That's the word I'm looking for. Yeah,
it's pretty much coincided with this shift in formation as well. I know they've had a lot easier fixtures recently, which helps it, but the whole fact of him sort of getting more involved from open play, playing from midfield has seemingly improved him a lot. And that's why I think this week there's potential that you can bench him because of all the doubles you've got. And it was an option for me to bench. I mean, even Man United have got like home to Wolves, and I don't know, it feels scary to do that. It's just away from home, we know that Liverpool's defence is not particularly good. And I think most people would probably say that as bad as Leicester are, they still always feel like they can score a goal. So you almost think, well, okay, Leicester will probably score. They probably won't keep a clean sheet. And therefore, 2 points compared to, say, a doubler for Trent would suddenly look very bad. But to bench him feels terrifying. We were talking about it before we came on the other day, weren't we? That this was the game he got 24 points in versus Leicester all that time ago.
I'm seeing him benching so many teams.
I know, but I can understand why. Like I said, it's not. I mean, you just said it yourself. Attacking returns, as good as he's been for them, you can't say for sure that that's going to happen. But it would terrify me, and I'm going to find a way to play him. I think.
Would you? I mean, like one of the key ones is like Cher or Botman, right? Cher or Botman with a double versus Trent. I'd play Trent.
Would you see? I think I'd still probably play a Newcastle defender, but I think I'd play Trent probably over a Brighton defender at this point. I think people are in the chat there saying they might bench them. But I mean, it can easily go either way there.
I'd just be playing Trent. He'd be like, if I'm setting my team up, I'll just put him in and then sort out the other spots.
You're probably right.
I think him and Trippier, you just got to play him this week.
Yeah, on Porro as well. His stats aren't, like you say, not brilliant there, but his stats before he came to this league were very impressive. And I think also that, considering it covers the last 6 game weeks, we have to remember that Spurs, apart from last week, have pretty much been dreadful during this period, and they have been getting battered. So to him still to maintain pretty high numbers in that small sample is pretty impressive. And I think if he does continue to play that right wing almost spot, or at least a very advanced position in the right wing back, that's only going to increase, especially with better fixtures to come.
I can't believe he got 12 points.
Yeah, I mean, if I was you, I'd be looking to play him again in these 3 games coming if you can in somehow. I haven't seen your team to see whether that's possible, but
I'm definitely playing against Leeds in Gameweek 38, right. So that'll be fun. But yeah, he was the furthest forward player in the last game. So yeah, he's one to watch. I'll just highlight the other players in this. I mean, Botman's in 12th, which isn't bad actually. 0.22. Estepinian 15th, 0.2. Not much in it between these guys. Cher 0.16. And my mate Dunk right down in 44th. 0.11. Doesn't really matter though, does it? With players like Cher and Dunk, all they need is one good cross on their head and that's a goal. The XG is kind of not really so relevant with them as it is maybe with the fullback. So you want to see them getting more open play, crosses in and shots and stuff like that.
It's also just, it's 180 minutes he's going to play in that game, isn't it? Unless you're going to tell me different. And then Stupinan, although he hasn't really been benched, he has been taken off a few times, and that potentially they could. He hasn't had a rest, has he? So you could say at some point, given the way his rotation policy is, maybe it's his turn eventually. I mean, I don't really know who they would play there. Would they play Colwell left back if they were to do that?
They're not going to bench Dunk.
No, not Dunk. Stupinan, I'm saying. In comparison.
Oh, I see. Oh, well, that's it. We don't have anyone that can play left back. We really don't. March played there for a bit under Potter, but he's not a factor now. I don't know who would play there.
No. But I suppose you could see that maybe if it wasn't going well with him, he could at least come off, and therefore, when you compare it to Dunk, Stupiman's got the more attacking threat. Dunk's got the 180 minutes pretty much sewed up. That's the difference. Yeah.
That's it. Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's move on to... I had something else I was going to say, but I've forgotten what it was. So we'll move on. Midfielders over the last 6. Sinistera at the top, interesting enough, with his 3 starts. Actually, non-penalty of 0.85. Very high.
Can't stay fit though, can he?
No, he can't. He's a good player though. Hopefully he can have a few more games under his belt next season. Anthony in second as well, 5 stars, 0.78. That's very high for him going into the double next week. And then you've got Salah there, 0.74. Look at this though, this surprised me. McAllister, XGI non-penalty per 90, non-penalty, so we know obviously he scored the penalty goals, 0.7. That's the highest of all the Newcastle and Brighton players. Shots per 90, 4.16. That is only beaten by a couple of players, Sinisterra, Anthony, and Rashford, still having lots of shots as well. And chances created, 2.27, not bad. We'll do a bit of a comparison with these players. But his stats are good, McAllister. And yeah, that is why I will be making the boring transfer to bring him in. And you've already done it.
Yeah, what was the XG on his goal this week? Laying on the floor with his head on the
Oh
line and it just bouncing. I bet that's pretty high because it doesn't really take into account the fact, well, most models that he's laying on his back or whatever it was.
Did you see Dwight McNeil's was 0.99?
Oh, was it? Okay.
The one where he was already celebrating when he tapped it in.
So 1 out of 100 people misses that.
Yeah, I don't understand that. Yeah, definitely. definitely me. Yeah, but I don't know what McAllister's was. If anyone knows in the chat, let us know. Jacob Murphy, ignore his price, 4.2, really, really cheap, but he's 7th on the list as well. Actually, I'm putting him at 0.67. People going for Willock, people going for Murphy. The Joe Linton kind of, I don't know, love in that I had is tempered somewhat.
It's waning, is it?
Yeah, I mean, he's 37th on the list. As a lot of people have said on Twitter and Newcastle fans, Longstaff out affects his position and how kind of far forward he gets. So I think it's probably between Murphy or Willock. Willock's down in 28th. I mean, do you like either of those two? Do you like either of those as like kind of differential captain picks potentially?
Differential to picking your team. I think it's very brave to captain, but like I said at the start, if you're not happy, do whatever you want. I think it's fine. You could just hit luck. I mean, look at this week. Look at the players that scored points in any individual given week. Virtually anything can happen. All sorts of players can return. So I don't hate it, but on paper, bringing in one of those and captaining is probably not the optimal play. I mean, I actually think Ben. If you don't fancy a Newcastle defender, right? Let's say you've ruled Haaland out because you want to go for a doubler. You don't fancy a Newcastle defender, which I think is fair enough. And then the attackers wise. Isak and Wilson are favourite, but then let's say you do think, they get one game in each and therefore it's not really a double. Then you do start to look, I think, at McAllister and Matoma. Although the fixtures are bad, they're probably likely to play both the games. And with McAllister's case, with the penalties as well, I don't think he's like a terrible captain option at all. I think people could just quite comfortably captain him.
That's where I'm going.
You're going to captain him, I didn't realise anyone was actually going to fall.
Yeah, I'm going McAllister captain. Just because I think Isak's going to be the obvious choice. Isn't he? And I do think there is a bit of rotation there. And I think, we'll do our predictions at the end, but I think there's goals for Brighton in these two games. I mean, there is some concern that our kind of players are all knackered. And, when I start talking about the squad depth, saying we don't have any right wingers, we don't have any left backs, we don't have anyone that can play at right back, that kind of does show where our kind of squad depth is. And we've got so many games coming in such a short period of time. And we've already had so many games. So that's the kind of issue. With that. But yeah, out of the Newcastle mids, I think Willock's the play. Almiron is back, so there's some risk to Murphy.
Yeah, they're saying that in the chat. St. Max and Almiron are there. And I agree. I don't think you can guarantee that Jacob Murphy would play both the games. So
Willock's the one.
You can't guarantee for Willock, but I think it's more likely, right?
I think he's fine. He's done pretty well. He's looking good in that position. He's the player. I think if you are going for a Newcastle mid, I think he's the one.
I just thought I'd let you know, because I know how you love models, that Matoma and McAllister are actually predicted to do quite well this week. They're about a point below the top option in Isak, or maybe slightly more, 0.5, but that's not a lot. And that's based on an average, when they simulate it thousands of times or however many for the game week. So it's within a range where you're happy to risk a point on optimal play, then have fun, go for it.
Well, I'm not going to have the opportunity to captain McAllister again in a Brighton shirt, I don't think, because he's almost certainly going to be on his way, so I've got to make the most of it.
I hope he goes City, to be honest.
Oh God,
Gundogan replacement. I think that's perfect.
I think Liverpool will get him.
Probably.
Mahrez in 34th. Just to mention him quickly, I was a bit surprised by that. I was looking for him in the top 10 because he's always in the top 10. He's right down in 34th. XG on penalty 90 of 0.37. It's not disastrous. It shows that midfield there are some good options with high XGIs. But yeah, if you've had him over the last few weeks, you've obviously done really well out of him. He's got 4 assists in 5 starts. and I'd expect him to start again against Everton.
Yeah, what do you think about that? Because and I know people look to me for the Man City stuff, but a lot of what I do with Man City is I look at the tactics and do a lot of research in terms of who I think is most likely to play the games. When you get to this point of the season where it's not just based on the tactics and the form of the players, he has to take into account, I think, the fitness of the players and who he's playing for the next lineup. It's almost like anyone's guess, right? And I think that therefore a lot of what I argue for, like tactically, there's no reason to play this player or play X player, goes out of the window because he almost has to use. But I would say that with Mahrez, the fact that he didn't play, I'm not sure how much that impacted, but would he play Bernardo Silva in this game? I mean, no for me. I don't think you play him right wing. So it's one of Mahrez or Foden that plays the right wing. I think we can be pretty confident of that. But that is the worry, is the fact that Foden is there and he hasn't really had many games recently. So you almost need Grealish to be benched in order for Foden threat to be non-existent to Mahrez.
And I mean, seeing Grealish after that game,
he was knackered, wasn't he? He was knackered. So this is again what I say, like tactically, I can give you no reason why Grealish wouldn't play because he's literally played every game that he's available for, apart from the Leeds one, which was an obvious rest and when it was predicted to be rested. But 5 days, 4 days, I guess, but 5 days gap between, Grealish could be fine and ready to go. And he plays most of the games he's available for. So suddenly you're in a position where it's Foden versus Mahrez for right wing and you can't be absolutely certain. I'd also add, just as another caveat, is that Bernardo Silva wasn't particularly good versus Real Madrid. He was pocketed. And Pep will always look for the game plan and what he can do. And I think at home, there is a chance that he tries to do something different with that spot because it didn't really work. The attacking impetus is on them to try and do something. And Mahrez is the Champions League boy. So I wouldn't totally rule it out that he uses Mahrez or Foden as a surprise versus Real Madrid. And then that throws into the thing, okay, well, maybe
gets another rest. Yeah.
Yeah. But if you've got him in your team, you play him all day, don't you? I just think the threat at right wing for Man City is large and it's the most contested position and Foden is right there. So it's kind of down to Grealish, really, and whether you think he's going to start, I would say, more than anything.
Just to interrupt you, Luke, a few people saying lag, that they're lagging in the chat. No idea why.
Oh. Just ruined my entire talk. Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, all of your great insight there is probably gone.
It's completely lost.
It'll probably come back on the pre-record. Everyone's saying okay. I don't know what happened there, but yeah. Anyway, we're fine. Basically, you said don't be surprised to see Mahrez benched again.
No, that's cutting it far. I would just say you have to work at it logically, and you think if Foden gets some game time at some point, you have to be pretty confident that Grealish is going to be benched to be absolutely certain that Mahrez plays. That's the worry, isn't it?
Yep. I think Mahrez starts Everton. I'm quite jealous, actually.
So you think it'll be Foden and Mahrez then?
Yep.
Okay. I can't argue. Like I said, I can't argue with that because fitness-wise, it makes sense. So.
Yeah. Yep. Interesting. Yeah, I'd love to have Mahrez as a differential this week. If you've got him, I think you can be quite confident of at least a return, I'd say, against Everton. Forwards? Oh, I've cut the top off. Let me just sort that out. Oh, no, I haven't. I've just cut it out badly. Fine. Here's the forwards over the last 6. This is why people are moving towards Callum Wilson. He has 5 goals and 1 assist and an XG non-penalty penalty of 1.08, which is the highest of all players over the last 6. But, and here's the big caveat, 2 starts in 6. So, yeah, relying potentially from him coming off the bench. But, I mean, his stats are fantastic. XG, non-penalty per shot is second highest. Third, no, Vardy and who's that? Nunes with high, basically getting better chances, but he's still third. Points per 90 of 10.64. That's second only to Haaland. His conversion rate, though, 41.7%. Surely that's not sustainable as well going forward. Shot in the box per 90, 2.88. That's not crazily high. There's players around him with better than that. But yeah, I mean, the stats are great. Don't get me wrong. The stats are really, really good. And if you're chasing, I can see why people are going for it. But we've covered it already, haven't we? Watkins out for Wilson doesn't really appeal to me that much.
Yeah, it's just the hell. I mean, we covered it. Yeah, it's the Hail Mary, as I keep saying. You get potentially 2 games or at least a game and a half versus 1, and then suddenly it's appealing. I think after that, you pretty much bench that spot, most people, at least when I look at my team. Like, I wouldn't really use Wilson again, as much as it's like home to Leicester in 37, I think, which is appealing. I'd probably play Isak as my only sort of single, or maybe and keep him on the bench. So Wilson wouldn't play, Watkins wouldn't play either. And then in 38, Newcastle away to Chelsea, because you have to consider the rest of the game weeks, right? And obviously injuries or stuff could happen, um, which doesn't feel great. And then Watkins' game's okay. I think is it you lot guys he's playing? I can't remember.
Mm.
Is it Brighton? I
Yep.
think it's Brighton. Which again isn't awesome, but you could potentially use him if you wanted to there. So yeah, you can almost see it as like a one game punt if your team is set up that way, where it's like they just stay on the bench after that. So when it comes down to that, do you risk someone who might get 2 versus 1? I can then suddenly see the appeal and it jumps back out to you.
Yeah.
Um,
No, I agree. I think if you've got like Greenwood on your bench and some other guys who don't really want to play, it's more difficult. But if you're happy just to bench Wilson after this, then it doesn't make him a bit more appealing. I mean, someone's putting out in the chat that the minutes for quite a few of these strikers in the top kind of 10 are low.
Low as hell, yeah. That's half the problem.
Wilson 313, Jota 385, Vardy 333, Welbeck 310, and now Ferguson's back, and Nundav's knocking around as well. And Ciso 342. I think his minutes are going to increase now. March is good. March is back. I think he's a decent option actually. And Ciso, 2 assists and a goal is our 6th. And then you've got Isak. He's down in 17th out of strikers over the last 6, 0.45 XGI non-penalty per 90. We're not 100% sure if he's on pens with Wilson on the pitch, are we?
I still think Wilson's probably on pens, to be honest. I don't think we haven't seen conclusively, and I think there's even a chance. By the way, they argue about it, and it's whoever wins the penalty or something like that we've seen with teams before. But who knows? We're not given the information, so everyone's guessing there. I think Ferguson has been pointing out in the chat. If you want to go there as a punt and you think he plays both the games, I think that's quite exciting. I think you could do well out of that. I actually kind of like just moving, like if you want to ignore the doubles for whatever reason or just be different, then I think just moving to an Arsenal player, that be that a striker or a midfielder, like you could, I know Jesus splits opinion, but he's still relatively high on this data and they have got 3 pretty good games, I think, overall. And I think he's a very much a differential. So I don't know if people have got the money for that, but Jesus or a Martinelli or whoever from Arsenal from this point, it could be something different that most of the people at the top won't be doing because they'll be looking at the doubles. I think it's fine. Arsenal have been good all season, right?
I think this is very true because I think this final striker spot, if you're going with 3 attackers, I don't think this is a clear-cut decision. I don't think it's obvious to go for Wilson. It's not obvious to go for Enciso or Ferguson. And I think there are other, Kane, for example, if you've still got him, is decent. Tony, potentially, even just keeping him, given how well he's been doing and with the pens. Watkins is completely fine. Jesus, like you say, do you know what I mean? That this spot is something I think we can.
That's the one you can play with, because of the midfield, like we spoke about.
Yeah.
Someone in the chat, Adam Clark there, Mitrovic versus Southampton. Yeah, we mentioned he's back, but I didn't even think about bringing him in. But I mean, that could be anything.
Well rested.
He's definitely well rested because he put on 2 stone as a result of it. We'll have to see. But
does he definitely come straight back in?
I would have thought so. The guy's Mr. Fulham. I know he's let them down this season in certain ways with obviously his behaviour and whatever else, but I'd be surprised. I mean, it would be harsh on Vinicius because he's just started playing well, but I think he probably would, right?
I would have thought so. I think that's a punt too far for me.
He's not going to see 90 either, is he? Or is it just because it's suspension and it's not fitness related? He's been training like a demon and he can see 90 easily.
Yeah,
I mean,
hard to know. I think it's just a bit too risky when we've got, I think Isak, Wilson, Jesus, Watkins. I think those 4 I'd still rather have this week than Mitrovic.
Yeah, we're scraping the barrel with different options as we're trying.
We are. Here's your cheat sheet. I love this chart. I think this is a really nice chart. Talking about captains, talking about players. This is your Game Week 36 captain dilemma chart. I haven't put Trippier on here. I mean, he is, in the kind of conversation. But I think for the majority of us, it's going to be between Matoma, McAllister and Isak. And then potentially Callum Wilson, if you're where Mark is, he's got to be a consideration, right? Because he's that kind of explosive potential player who could come off the bench and get a brace like he has done in the past. I like these tables because they kind of show sort of different sort of strengths and weaknesses for different players. I mean, look at Matoma's touches in the box. I wasn't expecting that to be the highest per 90 of all players. 10.76 touch in the box per 90 for Matoma. McAllister's is 4. Isak's is like 6. Wilson's is 10. So, when I think of Matoma, I think him kind of on the wing, cutting inside. But he is getting touches in the kind of key areas. His shots in the box is the highest as well. But, I mean, Wilson has 10 and he's had significantly less minutes than him. So, per 90, It's Wilson with the highest shots per 90, but there's not in the box, but there's not a huge amount in it between them. Big chances per 90, that falls to Wilson as well, but a small sample size. And if you're looking at big chances created, that's where Isak comes in, 0.41. And he had chances again in that Arsenal game. People were a bit worried about him being shipped over to the left to kind of accommodate Wilson, but Isak stood out to me more than Wilson did in that match. So there you go. No one's really considering Matoma, right? I think most people are probably going for one of Isak or Wilson, I'd say.
Yeah. It's because of the gap between the games, isn't it? I know the pattern has been that they switch around, but I think there is a justifiable part of the Twitter sphere or whatever that say that Isak has got more than enough time to play both games up front. And I think from what we've seen so far, he is the preferred striker overall. Like when both have been available, it seems like Isak has played. And then when it's been a midweek game, they've kind of rested Isak and used Wilson. And then, Isak's ended up coming on anyway or whatever. It's just obviously Wilson can't play any other position apart from 9. He can't play on the wing.
I don't think they're going to play both of them against us from the start.
I wouldn't have thought so. I know we've sort of spoke about the Longstaff thing already, but I think, he might abandon that and he might just go for the 1-on-1 again, just as off the basis of what happened against Arsenal, which, like I say, it's pretty harsh because it's a tough game. But I think that might be what happens.
Yeah.
And I could be totally wrong. I think Matoma's fine. So review likes Matoma. He's right up there alongside the other guys, just like a little bit below, and he's expected to get more minutes ultimately. I mean, I know Matoma has been benched, but you'd probably expect 180 from him, right? Again, we're back on this thing. If he's on the pitch, he's got a chance. So
I mean, there was that comment from De Zerbi a few weeks ago, wasn't there, which kind of said he's not used to playing this many games, but he's got to kind of get over that and start. And then he benched him in the next game. They kind of made a few changes. So there's a chance that there are some benching for Brighton players over the next 2 weeks because we're playing 4 games in 2 weeks. But we're running out of options, as I said before. So I would be surprised if he was to miss out. And Buonanotte didn't cover himself in glory, I don't think, in the last game. One thing on McAllister, he had a couple of headers in that game in the last match. He did. I know his goal was very, very lucky. But his stats are really good, and eye test as well. He is getting into good positions and having good chances. So, for people worried that he's just going to be like go back to this DM role, I don't think it matters because he often operates as a kind of 8 and he's making good runs and getting forward. And I like that kind of player, that kind of Ramsey, Torre, Gumires last season type guy. So, I'll be going for McAllister, I think, this week. But I can see the appeal of all 4. I
often find that funny. Everyone's like, you see it a lot, don't you? Oh, this player's too wide. He can't have an influence in the game. He's too wide.
Yeah.
And they say it like for Isak, for example, he's too wide. And then you get a player like McAllister who is dead down the centre. Yes, he might be deep, but in open play, he breaks into the box, into the right areas, as you can see, and he's on penalty. So now he's too deep? That suddenly comes out rather than being central. Like, what's more important? I don't know. I'm not here to say which one is more, but I just think that people sort of ignore that fact. And this is something that's been levelled at even the likes of Kane before. He's too deep in the play. Yeah, but if you're in the central penalty area where most of the goals are scored from, which is where McAllister can get to, then
the main difference between Kane and McAllister is Kane is like an unbelievably clinical finisher, whereas McAllister is
I wasn't trying to compare them like that. But...
no, but it's true. I mean, seeing as you watch Kane operating deep, and then he only needs one chance to get a goal, whereas McAllister, you feel he needs at least a couple, like we saw the other day, because his headers get saved straight. The goalkeeper, his shooting isn't amazing. He's got a great long range strike, but he's not really so clinical in and around the penalty area. But he's getting into good areas and has good stats, so there could be a haul coming for him between now and the end of the season. And I want to be on that, I think. Anyway, that's your cheat sheet. Let's take a look at some fixtures. Gameweek 36. I actually took your predictions live. That's why we were a little bit late starting. And it was ridiculous how close they matched onto my ones. So Leeds, Newcastle. We've both gone for a 2-1 Newcastle here. Both backing Leeds to grab a goal to ruin those double cleans or those Trippier captains' hopes. But you got to think Newcastle are going to win this, right?
Yeah, I suppose it's how much you believe in Leeds and they want to stay up and all that theory and playing for something. But Newcastle are playing for something too, and they still remain a good team. So they're a better team on paper than Leeds. So I'll go for a Newcastle win. It's as simple as that for me. the way results have been going, I
Who
wouldn't bank
knows?
on
No,
it.
I know. Big Sam effect. Villa Spurs. We've both gone for 2-1 here to Villa. They have, I mean, what, we talk about Brighton and that weird performance against Everton, but Villa have massively gone off the boil a bit since that big win against Newcastle. I mean, they got the win, they got the 1-0 win against Fulham, but losing to Man U, losing to Wolves, I was surprised with that, and both those games without scoring.
I think they haven't been playing as well as they have, but I think they've been unlucky with the results as well. I think they had a higher XG than Wolves and were slightly unlucky. I don't know if you saw Watkins' header as well. It was a great
Yeah,
head.
yeah,
Well, apart from the fact it was straight at the
yeah.
goalkeeper, it was a great chance. Like I said, I kind of like that's what's kind of holding me back from moving out Watkins because I feel like he could do some damage in this game. Yeah, I fancy. I don't think Spurs have just sorted all their issues out in one game. So I think Villa can bounce back at some point and it will happen eventually
They should
because he's
score.
too good of a manager.
Yeah, they should score. Palace had a really, really good spell against Spurs where they could have easily got a goal in that game and just couldn't. But you've got to think with Watkins playing the way he has done over the last couple of months, he's got to fancy it. Chelsea Forest. I've gone for a little point for Forest here. Gone for a 1-1. You've gone for a Chelsea win.
Yeah, just Forest away from home. Chelsea, as bad as they've been, I feel like they should win it. Similar to the Bournemouth game, I guess, where eventually the team strength has got to start clicking and they start doing something. So I think they'll probably win. And annoyingly, I don't have Chilwell for it.
That is really annoying, I know. Palace Bournemouth, not a huge amount to say. There's much investment in here. I've gone for a 2-0. You've gone for a 3-1. You mentioned Eze earlier. I mean, as a bit of a punt for people, looking for someone between now and the end of the season. I don't hate it.
Yeah.
He's on pens probably, isn't he?
Yeah, I mean, it seems to be. He took the one when Zaha was on the pitch. So unless Zaha has decided to take them back, which I guess he could do, they've got Bournemouth, Fulham, Forest. Home games versus Bournemouth and Forest in those three. I mean, at any stage in the season prior to this, you'd say that's like up there with the best 3 runs you could have in the whole time. So as a result, if you're looking for a differential, he's probably up there. But I don't even know if he is a differential because there was a period where people fancied him right after he scored a few points. But it's just that whole midfield position again. I just don't know how you find a spot for him. But yeah, I do kind of like him for these 3 games, definitely.
Dal is firing jokes into the chat. He's Luke thinks that McAllister can break Kane's goal record. Love that. Yep, that's exactly what he was implying.
Yeah, definitely.
And he follows that up with how can Villa be on the beach? Birmingham to City. Excellent. Great banter. Great banter from Dal. Love that.
Top tier stuff.
United Wolves, both gone for a clean sheet for United. Manchester United, getting told off by Newcastle fans for calling them that. 2-0, I've gone for, you've gone for a 1-0. Good news for De Gea, who's in my goal. He keeps making mistakes and everyone hates him, but he's doing all right, actually, for me.
I think I could have it wrong. I think they've only, and I did it the other day, actually. I might just check live, but I think they've conceded 8 goals at home all season, Man United. And as good as Wolves have been, I think, in terms of the manager and the improvement, we all know they struggle to score goals, especially away from home. So I think out of clean sheets, I don't know what the odds are, but I would have thought Man United would have been relatively high on the list.
They are bottom of the attack data, Wolves. XG on per 90 of 0.72, which is just below Forest, 0.74. And that's quite a drop off from Fulham, for example, in 18th, 1.05. So surely it's going to be a routine United clean sheet. Surely. What can possibly...
You would have thought so, but they're in a bit of turmoil at the moment, aren't they? With De Gea and everything. But yeah, it only takes one game to snap back in. So I think if there is a clean sheet on offer this week, that is one of the top ones for a single game anyway. Obviously, you want to play your doublers, but yeah.
Yep. Southampton Fulham. I'm seeing quite a few Shaw benching, by the way, because same reason as Trent. People are playing.
Yeah, I'm probably going to bench him as well, despite me thinking we get a clean sheet. But
tricky one. Yep. Southampton Fulham. Both gone for a draw. 1-1. You gone for 2-2.
Yeah, I don't know how to call this one, to be honest. Got no idea. Just went for a draw.
Don't think it matters, to be honest. I think any of us are going to be... Apart from that one guy in the chat who's buying Mitrovic this week. I'm getting a bit of stick as well because I put this as the Garden Centre game, but it is at 3 o'clock. So technically it shouldn't be...
You're breaking your own rules,
Garden Centre. Yeah, I've kind of been a bit more lax with it than the mark is. I just kind of use it to describe the boring game. Hypothetically, it's where you would be if you were at the Garden. If you could go to the Garden
He's not going to be happy with you. He's not going to be happy at all.
Well, he's not here, is he, Luke? He's not here.
You rule the roost now.
I'm in charge now. Brentford West Ham. I've gone for a 1-0. You've gone for a 2-1 to Brentford.
Yeah, tricky game
Yeah, it's a
again. I
tricky
think
one.
West Ham playing
Can I
well,
just
and
say, I was bloody right last week when I called the West Ham United win. Remember I said West Ham are going to win that? I got loads of stick in the chat. Oh, Az hates United. Is his bias coming through again? Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I knew they were going to win that game.
fair play. No,
Thank
fair
you.
play. I didn't see that coming. I thought Man United would do well, but they were terrible in that game.
They're so bad away. So bad
Rice
away
and
from home.
Paqueta was so good.
Rice is really, really impressing at the moment, isn't he?
Mm.
I mean, he's been valued at, 120 million or something? Don't think they're going to get that for him, but...
His performances are just,
Yeah.
they're just getting better and better and better all the time. So good.
Yep. Everton City. Interesting game, this. Obviously, Everton off the back of a crazily good performance against us. At home now, doesn't get any harder, really, than City, though. I've gone for a 3-1. You've gone for a 3-0. Give them the 1 just to rub it into Edison owners. Just can't buy a clean sheet, can they?
I went for the 0 for the banter for that exact reason. I mean, it should be a 0. It should be every week for Man City, so let's see what happens.
Yep.
I think Diaz will come back and play, though, and he makes a difference. Calvert-Lewin's obviously their main threat. I'd expect they'll probably go for their aerial guys as a result in defence. Not that they've got that many options. And then again, I'm talking about tactics when there could be fitness stuff because it's Real Madrid in, 3 days afterwards, is it?
Yep.
So we'll have to see. But he still needs to win the games. That's the bottom line. The fact that Newcastle beat Arsenal as well, I mean, he would need to win this one anyway, but it's not like he can not just afford to not focus on the Premier League. He's going to put out a strong team, in my opinion. I don't think there's going to be too much rest and rotation.
And that's the bottom line because Luke Williams said so. WWE was it?
Whatever.
Arsenal Brighton. This should be a great game. It was a great game last time we played them. They battered us for a bit, and then I think we got a goal or maybe even 2. Just 2 really exciting attacking teams. So I've gone for an Arsenal win. I think they're a better team than us, so they should win it. 3-2. You've gone for 3-2 as well. But crucially, goals for Brighton in this game.
Yeah, I'm not sure if Arsenal can stop them scoring. The defensive data has not been great. Again, I don't put much weight in this, but I think it's like 3 clean sheets at home for Arsenal all season. Brighton are still right up there for one of the top attacks, so it'll be a surprise if they clean sheet.
I think it's only Southampton that's had fewer clean sheets at home than Arsenal.
Yeah, we mentioned this before, didn't we? They're like level, and then Southampton are on like 1 or something. I don't know, just Brighton's strength of attack, I'd expect them probably to score, but Arsenal, the way they've been just handling these kind of games, I feel like they're probably just gonna end up winning it in the end.
Yep. And then Leicester, Liverpool, both gone for the same score here. It's ridiculous how similar our predictions are this week. Leicester, Liverpool, I've gone for a 3-1 Liverpool. So have you. Tricky one to predict because of Liverpool's form, but they're going to score.
Would have thought so. Liverpool are pretty bad away, aren't they? But Leicester are just so bad that I just think surely Liverpool can get a few goals. But yeah, it stinks of a game with a few goals on paper at least.
Yep. And then finally on Thursday, it's another really good looking game. And I went to see Brighton at St James's Park a few years ago, and it was incredible. I loved St James's Park as a stadium. We lost that game. I think one of our stupid players got sent off after about 10 minutes. It ruined the game, but great atmosphere there. And 2 teams that have definitely overachieved this season. So big game for both clubs. I've got gone for a draw. I think we'll cancel each other out. I've gone for a 2-2, and so have you. Goals again though.
Yeah, hopefully. Tough one. Another very tough game to call.
Yeah, we've both gone for 4 goals for each of Brighton and Newcastle over this period. So that bodes well for the attackers that we're getting.
Yeah. People raising in the chat there that Brighton, if they're going to concede 3 to Arsenal and 2 to Newcastle, should you play the defender over the likes of Trent?
I'd play Trent. I'd play Trent over the Brighton
defenders. Yeah, you said that, haven't you?
Yeah, definitely.
I still can't get away from it. It's a double. I find it so hard to just not play the double player. It's like if your player already busts and then if he concedes and then everyone else just sat there waiting with another game. It's so hard to take mentally.
Estepinian's a bit different, isn't he? Because he's got that he's got that attacking threat, whereas Botman and Cher. I mean, Cher does, I guess, but Botman doesn't. Dunk doesn't, for example. So Estepinian, but I'd play Trent. I'd just play Trent. I just don't think you can bench him at the moment.
No, I can't really argue.
No. Captain Matrix. Enjoy this while it lasts because I can't see too many of us going away from Haaland in 37 with a double. Although Rashford or Fernandes is tempting, I think it's a better looking double for United. I mean that, and then it's Brentford for Haaland in 38. I guess maybe we could be rolling the dice a bit with players. Salah versus Southampton, Kane versus Leeds.
Oh, I think there'll be a little bit more
You
diversity in
think?
38,
Yeah.
just off the basis of no one really cares, or they're trying to catch 5 points on a mini league or whatever.
Okay.
So I think 38 will be more of a crapshoot, and I think that's fine. Away to Brentford's not, the easiest game in the world, I would say. So I honestly think that Rashford in 37 will be looked at quite a lot, and Bruno
Yeah,
Fernandes as well for the same reasons.
Yeah, maybe I should rephrase. I think if you're in a sort of a comfortable position, I think Haaland looks a good option for 37 and 38. But yeah, like you say, if I'm 150k going into 37, I probably will take a punt on Rashford and then definitely take a punt in 38 and just hope that Haaland doesn't hit. Imagine if I get like just outside the top 100k and if I captain Haaland, I would have made it. That'd be devastating. But this week's interesting. We're not going to go into too much more on this because we've talked about it loads. But yeah, 36. I think the primary candidates are Isak and McAllister, and then anyone else is a bit more of a punt. Salah versus Leicester, even a single game week. I know that's not going to appeal to you because you don't even want to bench, a Newcastle defender. But Salah versus Leicester, it's not a bad game.
No, it's not. He could do fine, but I think just owning him is probably enough. I can't bring myself to do it. I do think Trippier is fine, just on the bait. I know he hasn't been doing well, but it's that whole 180 minute set piece. Is like he could easily get a clean sheet versus Leeds with a set piece. He could get like a 12 point or a 9 pointer or something versus Leeds, and then just back it up with maybe 2 or 1 versus Brighton. Suddenly that's a very decent score. Again, you need your striker then to to do pretty damn well to beat that. And you're not guaranteed the minutes. So I think that's fine. Like I wouldn't be ripping my team apart, put it that way, to try and solve that issue. If I had Trippier in my team, I think I'd probably just captain him, to be honest.
Yeah.
And it's scary because I know people love their whole, who's been scoring points recently, and he is certainly right at the bottom of the barrel. Since like the World Cup, it's like been 2 or 1 every single week. But it doesn't have to work like that. It's just he has been polar opposites in terms of overperformance and underperformance, and the true reality is somewhere in between.
His stats are still good, and Newcastle's defensive stats are still good. So there is a chance of a clean sheet for at least one of those games, and there is a chance of attacking return. So he's definitely not a bad option. If we look at the captain conversation, obviously we've got the kind of cheat sheet table a little while ago. This has got the season data on it as well. Haaland 35 goals, still absolutely ridiculous. Callum Wilson 15 goals though this season and 5 assists. 20 attacking returns for him, given that he's played a bit of a bit part season for a lot of it. Really good season for him. Salah 19 goals now, 8 assists. I think he's cemented now as the greatest ever FPL player that we've ever had. So 6th consecutive 200 plus point season. Fantastic. Mental. Yeah, absolutely amazing. Although Kane, 26 goals and 8 assists as well.
That's incredible.
Absolutely nuts.
I think he's going to struggle to beat that again the rest of his career, I would say. Yep. Which people may not agree, but that's some total to get towards this back end. I mean, maybe it changes if he moves club, but
yeah, I mean, and all the players. I mean, Isak 10 goals, like that's a good start for someone kind of new to the league. Matoma 15 goal involvements for him. McAllister with 10 goals. It's really strong for a lot of these players, and Trippier with 7 assists as well. So yeah, I mean, any of those options are good. Basically, that's the long and short of it. But yeah, over the last 6, it is Wilson at the top, and over the season, he is second only to Haaland out of these players. Actually, non-put it for 90 over the season of 0.81 is very.
If they were both guaranteed to play 180 minutes, everyone would just captain Wilson, wouldn't they? I don't think there'd be any debate there.
Absolutely,
because he'd be the central striker. Yep. His stats are generally better in that position.
100%. Yeah,
and I think probably on pens, but
yeah, 100%. And then opponents, Everton over the season are bottom of this. They're conceding the most XG on penalty, but a lot of that's under the Lampard years. But actually, over the last 6, they are bottom of that again. XG on penalty conceded 2.36. So actually, I slate Lampard, but it's actually got worse over the last 6 for Everton and City to play. Leicester are third, Leeds second. Conceding lots of chances. That's got worse as well. Obviously, since what's his name went? No, sorry, Leeds. Who they have? Jesse March.
Gracia.
Yeah, it's got worse for them since Gracia came in and all the problems they've had as well. So yeah, that again is another string to the bow for Wilson and Isak too. Here's my team this week: De Gea in goal, Trent, Trippier, Dunk, Salah, Rashford, March, Matoma, Haaland, Watkins, Isak. I'm afraid there's not much in the way of excitement here. Grealish, Moreno and Porro on the bench. What can go wrong? It looks like a bloody good bench again, doesn't it? I'm going to get more points, I reckon, from those three. Transfer March to McAllister captain.
Okay, yeah, can't argue, and I can't even sort of have a go at you for having Porro on the bench and
No.
Grealish. I mean, any of those players could score points this week, you know that. But how would you fit them in? I don't really see how you do it. It'd have to be probably at the expense of Watkins, and that doesn't feel right.
Nah, or Dunk potentially for Porro to try and get the attacking play.
Um,
But
I suppose, but again, no, I'd go with the Brighton defender personally.
yeah.
25-pointer for Porro incoming, people are saying.
God, probably if I get another 20 points on my bench, I quit.
When I looked through FPL.team and looked at this was always the week for me that I thought this is just horrendous for the bench.
Yeah, well, in some ways you were helped out with the Chilwell injury because if he'd been fit,
I'd have started him 100% and I would have probably
it'd have
benched,
to be,
benched Trent. I mean, I've used one, I had 2 free transfers. I've already used one to get McAllister for March. So that's why you can see that there. And I've got another one to use now. So yeah, on my plan, I wouldn't have had to do that transfer as well. So I'd have had 2 free transfers with that team and it would have been hard to know where to use it apart from maybe to get a third Newcastle. I wanted to keep it, to be honest. But
I mean, your team is very similar to mine. Kepa in goal, Trent Trippier, Estepinian, Salah Rashford, Matoma McAllister, Isak, Haaland, Watkins. Our only difference is you've got Kepa, I've got De Gea, and you've got Estepinian, I've got Dunk. That's it.
Sadly. Yeah, Raya at home to West Ham. Do I play him over Kepa?
Probably. I'd probably go
You think?
Yeah, I think so. West Ham got Europe, haven't they?
Yeah, it doesn't seem to make a difference.
Well, no, that's true. I'd probably play Raya, I think. I think for a score.
Yeah, I mean, Chilwell I don't need to worry about now, but Shaw I think probably gets a clean sheet. Grealish if he starts, and I think it's possible he can. I mean, it's a great game as well. You just have to take it on the chin that they're going to get points. My move's pretty much probably going to be either Watkins to Wilson. I think I'll probably I'll probably only do that if we get the leak, though, that he's going to start the game. I don't know whether we are going to get that. But it is the Leeds game first, right? Am I correct in thinking that? So if we get the information he starts that, you get probably the best game of the double with him presumably as number 9 for 60, 65 minutes at worst in that game. And suddenly it becomes more appealing.
Would you captain him?
I think I wouldn't. No, I'd still captain Isak, I think, because I just think he'll play more minutes over the 2. Yeah, if that doesn't happen or we get Leaky doesn't start, then I'm just not going to get him on the off chance that he comes off the bench and maybe plays the other. And I'll probably either do Chilwell to Shah. In fact, that's all I can do now because I already talked about the Pope thing. I can't afford him anymore. It was going to be Raya to Pope and get a double that way, but it'll probably be Shah. And then if I've got Shah, then I'm in the same position though, because then who do I play? Because I don't want to bench Trent, and suddenly I'll have to bench Watkins in order to play Shah.
I wouldn't get Share with this.
So how do I get my third Newcastle then if I don't get Wilson?
You don't.
See, that's it. I'll be like the only one in the world with only 2 Newcastle.
Well, I'm going with 2. I'm not going to have 3.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Don't know if that makes you feel better or worse.
I don't know. I had to think there for a second. I was like,
I don't blame it. But yeah, I mean, I'm in the same boat. My only way of doing it would be, I could do like De Gea to Pope if I wanted to, but it'd be for a hit because I'm having to get McAllister, so I don't really want to do that. Or it would be Watkins to Wilson for a hit, which again I don't really want to do. So
McAllister screwed me at that. I bet if Pope goes mad this week somehow and scores a hell of a lot of points. That was my move before I had to do March to McAllister. So he probably hauls, to be honest.
I really liked. I had my eye on that Pope move, but not for a hit. Yeah, cool. Okay, so Isak definitely captain.
I wouldn't say definitely, but again, it's based on that leak. If Isak's suggested he's going to start, and I can't see why he wouldn't, he'll be my captain.
Yep.
We'll just have to hope.
Before we move on to the outro, 650 people viewing. Thank you all for tuning in just before the Champions League semi-final. Do give us a like, though. We only have 100 likes, which is very low. So if you could all give the stream a like, hopefully you've enjoyed it. We're doing the best we can with what is quite a boring game week and quite a dull end to the season. So we do appreciate all your support in carrying on tuning into these. Black Box Leagues, Ali, 36 points for him, still remains top of the pile and top of the overall standings. Joanne's in second, Chris Glover, Tom Apperdale, Vicky Davis, and then got some risers and fallers down from the top 5. Ballas in 6th, Fred Foley in 7th, Stewart's in 8th, Stephen Browner in 9th, and Alex Jones in joint 9th as well. So the top 5 looks quite set at the moment, but yeah, it might be a few more twists and turns coming. But come on, Ali, we're still rooting for you to go on and win it all, having an unbelievable season. Just before we finish, just a final mention. I want to mention Gameweek 39 again, which is coming up Saturday, the 3rd of June. I will be playing in that. And I don't know if anyone's seen Focal's free kick that he scored. He went to Anfield as part of a So Rare promotion, scored a worldie left foot free kick. You see that, Luke?
I have not seen that. No,
Unbelievable.
I shall certainly check it out though.
Yeah,
It wasn't a Michael Owen situation, was it? It wasn't like a 10-year-old in goal.
Could have been. Can't really see the goalkeeper, but no, he's a tiny player, Focal. So yeah, do get
Nice.
involved with that. There's a gaffer game where you can build your team. Stick me in it as captain, obviously. But no, we're raising money for a great cause. You can come watch the game in Birmingham on the 3rd of June. And I know times are tough. If you've got any pennies to spare, do check out the Just Giving page in the description. You can donate to Street Child United, a great charity for helping homeless children, making sure they're fed, and raising awareness around all things do with that. And like you said, look, you're a bit of a player back in the day, but you're not playing in this, are you? You've had your injuries.
I'm well past it. Can't play now. Back's done in. But I might come along though. I've got the day off, so I'm going to try and wangle it to come along and cheer you on as from the touchline.
Yeah, there'll be a night out as well afterwards. We'll all be going out.
Say no more.
Yeah, come on, do it. Get involved. Thank you everyone for tuning in. Luke, you're not here next week, right?
Yeah, I think that's right. I'm not. Wednesday, I'm busy, unfortunately. So, cool. I won't be able to make it, but I'm sure the crowd will be pleased. There'll be a new face to talk to.
Don't know who that's going to be yet. So, put your suggestions on the back of a postcard and I'll try and make it happen. It can't be Mark. Don't just send Mark. He can't make it. He had forgotten to do the tables today. Well, I hadn't asked him, but he had forgotten. So he did those very rushed on his lunch break at like 2:00 this afternoon. So yeah, thanks to Mark for sorting that out. He's still lurking in the background, doing little bits and bobs. So we are appreciative. But yeah, do give the stream a like. Do leave us a comment as well. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Luke and I will be back for game week 38, the final game week of the season. I'll be back with a mystery guest, a mystery even to me, next week. But Luke, thanks a lot, and I will see you in a couple of weeks.
No problem, buddy. Thanks for having me. See you, everyone. Good luck for the game week.